Welcome back. This should be our last video in order to complete a shed drawing for Project Lead the Way class called Civil Engineering and Architecture. So we've previously inserted a number of different views. We've gone and done some modification and added some details into those views. And last but not least, we have the details on this wall section to worry about. And again, as a little bit of a reference, we are looking to effectively do something like we see here in the example. However, for our class, I'm going to want to see some thicknesses labeled in certain instances. So not stuff like the shingles, but on the sheathing, I'd like to know how thick that was. And on that bad insulation, I probably don't need to know about that too much. Maybe it would say an R11 or an R19, but a lot of that is dependent on what size rafter we use. So we're also going to be adding in some additional details here that you might be able to see. We have a fascia board here. We'll be drawing that in. We'll be inserting some examples of the double top plate as well as the sole plate here. I disagree with that being a sill. The sill would be down here where the floor joists connect to the foundation, so I'd call that a sole plate, but I don't want to debate too much. So let's get started. We're going to go to our section view. Okay, so I'm going to open up section 1, and I'm not going to worry about that. And Control S would certainly take care of that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename that section. So I just right-clicked on it, selected rename, and I'm going to call this typical, TYP, typical exterior, EXT, wall section. In a more advanced project, we might have a lot of wall sections and we would want to be very specific with where we're locating them. The nice thing again about Revit is it should now have updated the label for that particular view, which we can see here. All right, back to our wall section page, and we're going to use a tag. And there's what I would consider to be a good practice. It's what I was taught when I was learning how to do some basic drafting, which is you'll notice that most, maybe not all, but many of these, they have like a vertical alignment, okay? And then we have a short section of straight line, and that can vary, but we don't want them really long. And then we have an angled arrow pointing at the material being identified. So I'm going to show you how to put one of those in. And you'll notice they are nicely aligned. There's not like these lines out here crossing. And these would be called a leader dimension. They're not crossing out here. And everything's kind of spaced nicely. So let's just do an example of one. We'll do the asphalt shingles up at the top. Then we're going to go and talk about some of the inside details. So we're going to go to the tag. Okay, tag category. Oh, you know what? I am sorry. I am wrong. We don't want to do that. I want to do annotate text. I am sorry about that. Annotate text. And when I go into text, I now have some options up at the top here for a number of different segments. And I'm going to suggest we use the 2 segment. Okay, it looks very much like our example. We then have the ability to worry about justification of where the leader is at. And I'm going to say it's going to be in the middle of our text. All right. And then we also have the ability to do justification of the text or alignment like you would in a Word document. And since I'm going to be working from the left to the right, I want this left alignment. If you were doing your labeling on the left-hand side, you might want to select align right. And the way this works is I'm just going to kind of zoom in and I'm going to try to find that material In this case, the shingles, which are up at the top. And so I'm going to put my cursor in the approximate location. And when I left click and pull out, you'll see that there is a arrow attached to that area where I started clicking. So I'm going to drag this out at an angle, not straight, drag it out at an angle till I'm effectively clear of anything that would maybe get in my way of a horizontal line. And so I'm going to go, I don't know, right about there. And then I want to, and you see Revit here wants to help me do a nice short line. And so I'm going to go out to about here. And then I have the option to put in text. And I'm going to do asphalt shingles. I can spell today. All right. And when we're done typing, we left click. If you hit enter, it'll put you into another line of text, if that's what you wanted to do. But here we have asphalt shingles. And again, that effectively matches what we have on our example. So if you're comfortable with that, you could certainly work your way down. And the next item that we might do is the roof sheathing. So I'm going to try to mirror what I just did. You can see here Revit wants to help me kind of align these, so I should try to follow along. So I'm going to left click there, and it wants to help me align where that piece of text starts. And in this case, I'm going to have ply, I think this was 3/4 inch, and we'll double check this, and we can always come back and change it. 3/4 inch plywood sheathing. All right. And remember, I'm concerned about thickness, and let's verify what we had there. So you notice I can actually select the roof in this view, and I can look at its type, and I can look at the structure, and we did in fact have 3/4 inch wood sheathing. So my notation there was accurate. And we would just slowly make our way down from the top to the bottom. And before I get too far, I'm going to certainly go look at my first floor plan sheet and make sure, see now those aren't fitting in my wall section area. So I would probably have to go and adjust those, and let's see what that might look like. I may have to just redo them all together. I am too high here. So if I select the leader, you'll see I have the option to drag these down. And maybe I'll make this one. You see here, this becomes slightly problematic, and that's why maybe, see, I can only control so much there. I can grab this here, try to move this. So you know what, let's try this. Do some undos, and maybe we'll try to just take this and move the whole thing down. Ooh, that doesn't look half bad. And I just don't know if I have enough room for the asphalt shingles above. So we'll put a little bit of an angle on there. And then we'll do the same thing here, bring this down a little bit, and let's see what that looks like on our sheet. And now I am actually inside this inner borderline. And I would continue again, continue down. Control S, because we did some leader text, okay, leader text. Now, I'm not going to show you every piece here that we need to add, so let's start talking about some of the details that we might want to add. So let's start with like this double top plate, this right here, and we have a sole plate down at the bottom. So there's two ways we can do those details, and I'll show you both. I'm going to go to the wall section view, and let's start down here at the bottom. And under annotate, we have the ability to draw in detail lines. Okay. So if I select detail line, I can control the line type. And again, this is actually part of the template file we used. You may not have all of these. And you certainly probably find a video online on how to create additional styles if you needed to, but we're going to leave it at thin lines right now. And basically, I have the ability to draw. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to draw a line up. And I have a 2x6 sole plate, and that is 1.5 inches. Ooh, what did I just do? I think maybe I lost my, let's go back and annotate. I think I lost my number lock. So let's try that again. Number lock on 1.5 inches, and be sure to mark inches. So a 2x6, I believe, is 1.5 by 5.5. So we'll go up 1.5 inches, and then I can draw a line straight over. And then what is typical is an X on the end. We need to go back in here and get a detail line again. We put an X in that piece of wood or that piece of lumber to show that is an end view. Okay, so we can draw with some detail lines, and that may be beneficial. However, one of the advantages to using software is that a lot of times we have things to help us draw things faster and easier. And in this case, we're going to try using a component. So take a look at this. We're going to go into component, and under properties, we have a whole bunch of stuff here. Most importantly, dimensional lumber. And I'm pretty sure we need a 2x6. So I'm going to select 2x6, and you'll see I now have a end view of a 2x6 attached to my cursor, but it is not the right orientation. Now you've seen me use the rotate command, but on your keyboard, if you hit the space bar, that will rotate that item around, and depending upon what you do that, and that works with other things as we move down the road. It may rotate at 90 degrees. It may do it every 45 degrees. It kind of depends on the item you're using. But I want to put that right there. And that, to me, is a lot faster. And that is one of the benefits of using the piece of software here. And then I can make my way up to the top here. And I'm going to put in a double top plate, which in theory should be right about there. Well, let's look at this for a second. That is our ceiling joist, and underneath it we have the drywall. And this is one of the downfalls to dealing with kind of how all this stuff works together. I'm not going to worry about dealing with this detail at a later date. We'll look at this, but I guess we should be even with this top thin line. So when I go to put in my component, I'm going to make that even with that top edge, and then I have a double top plate, so I would need one more below. Oh, I didn't take that. Let's try that again. Left click to place, and there is my double top plate. Okay. Other things that we need to add. There is a fascia board on the end here, and I don't believe there may be. I don't think there's one on here, but we've talked about how to draw in with a detail line information for a fascia board. So in our example, I believe it says a 1x10. The height of that board can vary because it really just covers up the end of the rafter. So if we had a 2x10 rafter, we might need a 1x12 fascia board. It may or may not actually overhang down below. There are a lot of possibilities depending upon what we're looking to do. It may also just be on the end of the rafter and be cut flush on the bottom. And it may be some additional details up in here with a drip edge and some other details, but we might not be able to see those in our wall section. So we're going to try to worry about the things that we can see. So again, I'm just going to grab annotate, and there's a couple ways to do this. Some of you will say, Mr. Kraus, should this be 1 inch thick? And we're going to go with yes. And I'm just going to drag this down, and I'm going to type in this time. We're going to go 10, except I'm on an angle, so I don't want to do that. Let's go back and get, let's escape out of here, cancel that, and let's go back in with a detail line. And I want to go straight down and type in 10, although I didn't put in inches. So again, annotate line here, 10 double quote, and then I'll bring this back over an inch and bring it up to meet the underside of the rafter. Now, in the real world, again, we'd probably have a drip edge up in here. We may also have a situation where the top edge of this fascia board will be cut at an angle to match what the roof angle is. Okay, so I'm just going to come in here and we're going to modify this a little bit by deleting, and that's not even the right angle. That looks like the right angle. So I deleted that top line, and I can just simply drag this down to the end point here. And that would be a little bit more in line with the way it probably would be done, other than there would probably be a drip edge. And I can't really remember if there's a component with the drip edge at least loaded. Probably certainly something that could be in a library if you had one. Okay, so now we got a fascia board, but what we're missing on there, again, is the X, because we are showing the end view of a piece of lumber. So we would want to put an X in that as well. All right. So we've got a fascia board in, we've got our double top plate, and we've got our sole plate down below. Looks to me like we need to put in some insulation. All right. So again, this is some adding detail, not taking a whole lot of time, but this is, if we don't show it, someone would say, well, the shed doesn't have any insulation. So we need to make sure we show that detail. And right here, you can see there's an insulation option, and this is pretty slick. The biggest thing you have to pay attention to is the width. And you'd want to match the width to the size of the cavity in the wall or the ceiling or where the insulation is going to go. So if you see, I started at the top and I just drag that down to the bottom, and I've got insulation in my wall, but it's not filling up the entire insulation cavity. But if I select it, I should be able to come in here and go, you know what, that was a 2x6. That's supposed to be 5.5. And you can see there, now that insulation fills up the entire void of our wall. And I believe in this instance, or this example, we are insulating, we are insulating in the ceiling. So let's take a look at that. We'll use the same detail or annotate option. We're going to insulate. We're going to go from the midpoint of the ceiling joist, and we're just going to drag that off screen. Remember, we've got a crop going on here, so it's going to limit how far we go. So we just go past that, and I'm going to come back in and select it. And this was a 2x8, so that's a 7.25, 7.25. Let's see how this works out. All right. So looks like when I use the midpoint of that line included the thickness of our drywall. So all I'm going to do is get our insulation selected and use an arrow key to go up once or twice and get that properly aligned. All right. So all you'll need to do after we do a quick save is work our way down from the top, hitting each item as we come to it. And this will get you in the ballpark. Kind of think about order that things appear. You can see here where they've got the ceiling joist kind of sneaking in there because it might be hard to label the ceiling joist from below. So again, take a look at the size of items. Go ahead and put those liter dimensions in, and by the time you're done, you'll have a finished labeled wall section. And let's just go ahead and take a look at what this looks like on our first floor sheet. Again, I've established the vertical alignment. I've got my fascia board and my insulation and all that in, and all I have to do is add in my text. Last but not least is we have to detail or fill out our title block. Now, Revit's going to default, or I shouldn't say default, it's going to automatically have the view, or sorry, the sheet name, in this case, first floor plan, and we can rename that right over here, both the sheet number and the sheet name. For our purposes, we don't have to worry about that. We can also come in here and we should have the option to change things like project number. So for us in civil engineering architecture, this will be, let's go 2.2, the 2.1.3. I think that's what it was, 2.1.3, right? So the project number would be for whatever the company was using. Issue date, that's generally the date that this would get put out. Today is December 1st, 2020. You may or may not be watching it then. Drawn by, that would be the person who has worked on creating this sheet, or maybe there are multiple people. For us, I'm going to put my name and checker. Again, if you work at a company, you stare at something long enough, you might miss something that's very easy for someone who hasn't looked at a sheet for very long. So we might have a name there, and I'll put Mr. Themey. Mr. Themey is going to be the man who checked over my work. If you were in class, you maybe have a classmate that would be your checking, or you could certainly leave that blank. Again, as this sheet goes through its revisions, we may have things in here that we will add to as far as changes that may have occurred on the drawing, but we're not going to worry about that for our purposes. However, we do have owner and project name. So I'm going to say project lead the way is our owner, and the project name will be Shed in Revit. And there we go. We'll do a save. And the only thing that would left to occur is print this, and we will discuss that in class. If you are just watching this for your learning or for help getting through this project, hopefully it's been informative. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave hopefully appropriate and constructive criticism in the comments on YouTube. Thanks again. Looking forward to doing some more videos in the future, possibly. Thank you very much. Have a great time.